Okay, time for part 2 of the story. Okay, so I did the video last time about how I scammed a millionaire out of $200,000, lost it all, went homeless because I was unknowingly part of a big international Ponzi scheme. If you follow my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I moved into a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house pretty recently. And so the question is, how did I go from being homeless into moving into this big house? What happened? How did I get from there to here? What happened? Well, that story is also very long. I mean, as in years long. But I'll try and condense it down to sort of show you guys how I went from, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and then homeless and then to where I am now. Okay, so I was homeless in Tokyo. Now, one of the good benefits about being a foreigner in Japan is that most people will ignore you. If you're someone like me who's actually very introverted and you're not really, I'm not really like a go-getter, go out there and make tons of new friends. Like, I'm not that type of person. Japan's great for me because most Japanese people will ignore you. Just like straight up, they just pretend you don't exist. In Japan, there's this very kind of like ubiquitous kind of stereotype about foreigners, which is that we're all dirty and smelly and gross and whatever. And so me, being homeless, not being able to shower every single day, to them, it just fit the bill. They're like, well, yeah, of course, he's a foreigner. That's what they are, right? Now, to be fair, I was not homeless for like a long time. It was maybe 3 weeks at most. Like, it wasn't that long. It was long enough to give me ample time to sort of reevaluate my life and do some introspection about like, what am I doing here? What is, who is, what? Now, it was in February, so it was actually kind of cold, but I liked the cold and I didn't sweat that much, so it actually kind of worked itself out in that way. It was rather serendipitous. So I started sleeping in this park that was kind of nearby where I was living. It wasn't real close, and I would stay there and I would sleep there. And they had like water fountain, they had a place, I guess, for you to wash your dog or for your dog to drink from. It was like there's a water fountain up here, and then there was like another sort of spout. And so it was actually very easy for me to kind of wash myself, whatever. But again, it was February, so it was very, very cold. So washing myself was kind of something I didn't want to do that often. How I survived for the food is most supermarkets, bakeries, places like that in Japan, you can ask them for what's called mimipang, which is, it's ear bread, which is the bread crust. Whenever they make stuff out of bread, very oftentimes they cut off the crust, they put it all in a bag, and they either throw it away or they sell it or whatever. But a lot of places, not all, but many places, you can just ask them, can I have your mimipang? Can I have your bread crust? And they'll say, sure, here's a bag of it. It's like a pound or 2 pounds of bread crust. Here you go. So I ate a lot of that, to be honest. And was it great? No. But when you're hungry, everything tastes amazing. And then, of course, there was also the time when, I did have to actually eat things out of a garbage can. It wasn't that often, thank goodness. But it wasn't as bad as you'd think. It wasn't like rotten food out of the trash can. It was like things that were half eaten or things that were whole. Like people would just throw away like whole things, and they're just like, okay, it's still wrapped up, why not? But I did have to eat things out of the trash. Now, eating things out of the trash, drinking water from a fountain, and eating bread crust, you learn a lot about yourself. I mean, when you've hit rock bottom, it really puts a lot of things in perspective about like what's really important to you and what's really not important. But I'll get more to that in a second. Near this park, there was a church. And so I would go to this church to, wash up because they had like a shower. I guess I was too proud or too shy, too embarrassed or whatever to admit to them that like I was homeless. Like I couldn't tell anybody that. That's the thing. I would just make up stuff. I would make up that I was working this or I was doing that or my apartment didn't have a shower, which is unfortunately kind of a common thing in Japan for like lower end apartments. And honestly, if I had told them, I'm sure they would have helped me out. But I was too, like I said, I was too embarrassed, too proud, too whatever to admit that. And so I could have solved my problems really quick, but instead I was like, I have to do it myself. And so after a couple weeks, I was talking to this lady, and this lady, she had a friend who ran her own English school. This was a Japanese woman. She'd been married to an American guy, and they kind of ran the school together. And the American guy had gone back to America. And so here was this Japanese woman who didn't really speak any English at all. And she had this school, and it had, students, and it had people that would attend it, but there was no teacher anymore. And so she said, hey, I don't know what you're doing for a living or whatever, but if you're interested in a job, there's this English school here looking for a teacher. and they have accommodations and stuff if you're interested in living there, moving or whatever. Of course, I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't care about the money. I don't care what's what. I was homeless for less than a month, so my cell phone bill and contract had like no issue. So I didn't lose any of that stuff. So I called her up and I did the interview and whatever. I borrowed money from the lady because I didn't have any money, and I went to visit her. And yeah, it was like a mom and pop English school. They had a few students. It was very local. And it was like, like, here's this little tiny thing. If you could help out, that would be really great. And of course, I jumped at any opportunity because like, I didn't want to go back to my old school that I taught at. Because can you imagine calling them up and it's like, hey guys, so remember how I quit 2 months ago? Yeah, can we just pretend that never happened? So I couldn't go back to them. Again, I mean, maybe I could have, but it was like the whole pride, embarrassment thing where it's like, I don't want to. And of course, the whole thing about like, I didn't have an address or anything. I didn't have any money, so I couldn't go and apply to like other schools. Like if this woman hadn't introduced me to this whole mom and pop school thing, like I have no idea what I would have done, to be honest. Cause like I didn't think it through. I was like, I'll solve this problem myself. Thinking about it now, it's like, there's no way I could have solved it myself. So anyway, I went to this school. Now this school was, like I said, very, very small. And I ended up getting paid about $800 a month to teach here. It was basically part-time hours. I taught like 1 or 2 hours every day, 6 days a week. They had accommodations there, but I had to pay for it. I was included internet, utilities, all that stuff included was about $550 a month. So do the math, I had about $250 left. Then of course I had to pay my cell phone bill, which was still active. And that was about $50, $40-50. So basically at the end of the month, I had $200 for food and everything else that I needed to do. Once you've slept on a park bench, okay, you've eaten literal garbage and bread crusts. Like having a place to sleep and having like water and gas and internet and stuff. I mean, that was like, I was so happy. I was so glad that I was like, I have a bed now. It was no one had ever washed this little futon mattress thing in probably 10 years. I mean, there was so many mites and like literal bed bugs were there, but it was not a park bench. And there was a heater / air conditioner on the wall. So I was happy. Now for the first year or so, it was really great because like, I mean, I didn't have any money, but I had a ton of free time. I was able to survive, barely survive. At the time, it was kind of boring and kind of whatever, but like thinking about it now, it's like, it was really nice to not have much responsibility and be able to kind of sort of do whatever I wanted. I could stay up till 4 in the morning, wake up at like noon, get ready to teach from 3, come back at 5, do it all over again. Like it was really great. And I watched a lot of TV, I played a lot of games, and it was kind of like the freest time in my life since childhood. It was basically childhood, because it was like, as a kid you had to go to school, but then after school you were just free to do whatever, right? You would watch Toonami, you would go play on the trampoline, you'd go run in the street, you would, whatever. Then, however, things caught up to me. About a year or so later, I got the flu. It was pretty bad. The flu I got, I think it was that new swine flu that was going around like, in like 2010 or 11 or whatever. So I caught that. Now, I have made so little money, I was not in health insurance because there's no way I could have paid for health insurance. I got the flu and I went to the doctor, and the checkup plus the medicine altogether was about $200. And so all my money that month was gone. And of course, I couldn't save any money because, between buying one video game, eating food, and taking the train sometimes, I had no money. Like right after I got paid, like my money was wiped out. Now, I still had some food and stuff left over, and so I was like, okay, I can work this out. Now that I'm healthy and I'm not dead, which I should have been, I mean, come on, I can survive. So I survived on everything I had left in the fridge. But about 1 week from my next payday, which I got paid on the 25th of every month, so about the 20th or 19th or somewhere around there, I ran out of everything. All money was gone, all food was gone, everything. So for a week, I survived on ketchup, mayonnaise, and tap water. For the whole week, that's all I had. And that's when it hit me. Like, it should have hit me way before this, but that's when it hit me, where it's like, I really need to get my life together, So because I had a ton of free time, I was like, I should utilize this time and do something, worth doing. There's a used book and game store in Japan called Book Off. So I would go to Book Off, and they have books for like 100 yen, it's like $1. You can buy used $1 books, and they have all kinds of different books. So I went there, and I bought every single like Japanese language learning related book I could find, all for $1. So I bought like, 4 or 5 books for like $5, right? And because I had tons of free time, I was like, I'm in Japan. I don't really speak that much Japanese. I was like 20 or 21 or so. I don't really speak that much Japanese. And if I want to get a real job here in Japan, the first thing I need to do is learn the language. That's the whole thing. If you want to be a foreigner in Japan and you actually want to get a real job, you pretty much have to be bilingual or be an expat. I started to study Japanese language related books. Some were for foreign people, some were for Japanese people, like students in high school, you know? And so I would study these books, and I started studying like 2 or 3 hours a day, and then it became 4 to 5 hours a day. And then finally I was up to about 8 hours every single day for 2 years straight. Something about me and my personality is that like I'm very obsessive. If I get into something, or if I have to be into something like for a job, I will focus on that like 150%. I have to learn everything about it. So I would study for 8 hours a day studying Japanese. Now, eventually I ended up passing what's called JLPT, which is the Japanese test for foreign people. I passed the highest level first try. And then I passed the kanji test. Now the kanji test is actually for Japanese people born and raised in Japan. They take what's called the kanji test. And I passed level 2, which is, it goes level 1 is the highest, and then there's pre-1, which, and then there's level 2. So level 2 is basically like if you are born and raised in Japan and then you go to college, you go to university, that's about the level that is. And I was so proud of myself, you know, that I'd done it, because it's not easy. I mean, there's a lot of foreigners in Japan who've been here for 10, 15, 20 years. Never learn a lick of Japanese. Now I tried to get a job just based on that, but turns out that being bilingual is not enough to really get you a job. You need something else. You need another skill or thing to get you by. So I went to those like job websites, like how, you know, like job placement websites, you know, they have, and I looked at like the one that had the most jobs, and the ones with the most jobs were IT. All the IT and technology related jobs, there was like thousands of entries. All the other ones had like 10 or 100 maybe. So I was like, okay, I started looking through it, and turns out bilingual IT technicians, there's a ton of jobs for that in Japan. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm studying next. So I studied and I passed, you know, like Windows 7 certification, ITIL, Cisco CCNA, like all these types of entry-level IT certifications. I ended up getting this job that was going to be shift work on level 1 support. With level 1 support, that's like the call center IT support, where it's like, how do I turn on my computer? I don't understand. Is it plugged in? No. Is that important? But it was a job. The problem is that I would have been on the night shift. So I would have started at 8 p.m. and worked until 6 a.m. the next morning. And that would have been my life. Now, the company that I was with that was going to place me for a job, they contacted me Sunday night, one random Sunday. And they said that Monday morning we have this interview for this company, and it's way over your head. The guy that was supposed to do it, his name was Chris apparently, and Chris just bailed all of a sudden. I don't know why. Maybe he got a new job, maybe he got a better job or whatever, I don't know. But he bailed. And so they had this interview spot that was open. And of course they didn't want to cancel like right before the interview, because, you know, this was like a big, huge company, and there was like the general manager, and, you know, he has graciously opened up time for this interview, and they didn't want to like tell him that no, it's off. And so they said, hey, listen, you're not going to get this job, but we want you to go to this interview so you can see what like a real big company interview is like, you know, for like a big international conglomerate, huge company. And I was like, okay, sure, you know, fine. It's like no pressure, because again, it's like I'm not going to get the job. They told me many times, don't expect to get this job. You're way underqualified for it. 4 interviews later, I got this job. Again, like I had none of the requirements that they had. They had, you know, we want X years experience with this, and we want you to have at least 2 of these and 1 of these. And I was just like this kid who's just like, oh, hey guys, nice tie. Now during this, one of the projects that I worked on was with this American company who was selling like virtualization or whatever to this company in Japan. You know, and so they needed someone who was American and bilingual to interpret, translate, work with them, you know, help them out in Japan, show them around both in and outside the office, that type of thing. And so that's what I did. You know, I thought to myself, I suck at this job. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm just going to make them laugh. Just make them have a good time, make them relaxed, and just whatever, you know? And so it's what I did. Now at the end of this, it was about 2-week little project. At the end of this project, this American team came to me and they said, hey, we're expanding in Japan. We need a liaison for Japan and America. We need someone who's bilingual, who already has contacts of like some of our clients and whatever in Japan. And we're looking for someone to help out with that. Would you be interested? And I was like, yes, I would. Sure. You know, this is one of those things where it's like a career jump is right there. It's just given to you on a plate. Do you want this? And I was like, sure. I don't really like what I'm doing right now. And if it's something else and people who I enjoy their company, you know, they know me, I know them. Hey, sure, let's give it a shot. So I did. Now this job, there was 2 people for all of Asia Pacific. There was me and there was one dude in Singapore. And so we both had to work like 12 to 14 hours every single day. And then about 2 years later, my position got given away to a third-party contractor in India. So I was kind of out of a job. But the company that I was contracted through here in Japan, they're like, hey, you know, you've been doing good work. And you're highly qualified now because I had the language certifications, the IC certifications. I've had several years of experience doing kind of higher level stuff that I was not qualified for, but somehow fell into. And so they said, we want you to stay and work with us here. They said that I could keep my same base salary, you know, and the overtime would be much reduced, thank goodness, but I could keep the same base salary as long as I stay with them. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? And now fast forward a couple years after that, and here we are today. And so that's basically it. And so from a 19-year-old kid who unknowingly took part in a Ponzi scheme, I scammed $200,000 off of someone, I lost it all, was homeless, and now, many years later, I live in a 4-bedroom 2-bathroom house. I ate garbage, I nearly died from influenza, I ate nothing but ketchup and mayonnaise for a week. I mean, my life has been a crazy roller coaster. But honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything, because going through all of that, you learn a lot about yourself, about the world around you, about how things work and don't work. Like, I've learned so, like, the thing is this, like, you know, reading on Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook and whatever, like, you know, all these things, you know, all like the, you know, just kind of the professional outrage that exists in the world, you know? And like, a lot of it comes from these people who you can tell their lives have been very sheltered and they've been very protected their whole lives, and they're finally out in the real world, they're in college, and now suddenly they realize that life is not rainbows and butterflies like they thought it was, and they're super upset about everything. I can't believe you would say this. I can't believe you would make this joke. Oh, I can't believe the guy said humongous. Life could be so much worse for you than it is. I mean, I made a lot of dumb choices, but thankfully I kind of rectified most of them. But it's just, you know, you can always go somewhere else. If you don't like your job, you can get another one. If you don't like the city you live in, you can go somewhere else. Like, the world is so big. The world is so big. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, okay? And I've been across the world. I've been to, you know, Japan, I've been to Taiwan, I've been all these places. It's like, the world is so big, okay? Get out of your city, get out of everything. Go somewhere where no one thinks like you do and understand why they think that way. Live a different culture, live a different life, because life is way too short. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something today about why I am such a weirdo. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.